1. Which of the following best demonstrates an application of adult learning theory in a clinical setting? A. Mandating attendance at weekly lectures without feedback. B. Repeating basic content regardless of learner experience. C. Encouraging learners to draw on prior experience to solve clinical problems. D. Using only standardized tests to evaluate competence. 2. In curriculum development, what is the primary purpose of a needs assessment? A. To schedule class times for clinical rotation. B. To determine the number of students per class. C. To identify gaps between current and desired knowledge or skills. D. To evaluate the cost-effectiveness of instruction. 3. What is the best approach to mentoring a new clinical instructor? A. Providing them with all relevant institutional policies and leaving them to review independently. B. Allowing them to observe and then instruct without feedback. C. Scheduling regular one-on-one coaching and performance discussions. D. Evaluating their teaching only at the end of the semester. 4. When constructing performance-based evaluation tools, what should be prioritized? A. The difficulty of the tasks. B. Subjective impressions of competence. C. Clearly defined, observable behaviors. D. Length of the evaluation. 5. Which principle is essential when providing feedback to adult learners? A. Delaying feedback until course completion. B. Focusing exclusively on negative aspects to promote growth. C. Providing specific, timely, and constructive feedback. D. Comparing learners with their peers. 6. Which of the following most effectively promotes regulatory compliance in clinical documentation? A. Encouraging students to write as much detail as possible, even if irrelevant. B. Reviewing policy once a year during orientation. C. Regular audits paired with targeted training sessions. D. Allowing learners to develop their own charting format. 7. Which strategy best supports learner autonomy in clinical instruction? A. Directing all decisions to instructors. B. Creating rigid schedules with no flexibility. C. Offering case study options for self-directed learning. D. Assigning the same tasks to all students regardless of skill level. 8. In the context of evaluation methods, what is a formative assessment? A. A final test determining course completion. B. An assessment used for program accreditation. C. A low-stakes evaluation conducted during instruction to guide learning. D. A required competency checklist for regulatory purposes. 9. Which communication technique is most effective for de-escalating a conflict during clinical training? A. Ignoring the issue until after training. B. Using assertive and active listening strategies. C. Elevating the issue to senior management immediately. D. Reprimanding the learner in front of peers. 10. What role does backward design play in curriculum development? A. Starting with content and building activities around it. B. Designing the learning environment first. C. Creating assessments before defining learning outcomes. D. Identifying desired outcomes first and aligning instruction and assessments to them. 11. Which mentoring approach is most effective for diverse learning styles? A. Adopting a single structured method for all. B. Encouraging learners to adapt to the mentor's teaching style. C. Adjusting mentoring techniques to align with individual learning preferences. D. Avoiding adaptations to maintain consistency. 12. Which regulatory guideline must be adhered to when evaluating clinical performance? A. Use of informal instructor opinions. B. Alignment with institutional budget restrictions. C. Application of state and accrediting body competencies. D. Student satisfaction surveys only. 13. When delivering clinical instruction, which approach aligns with experiential learning theory? A. Reading textbook passages during practicum. B. Delivering traditional lectures in the clinical environment. C. Guiding students through simulations with debriefing. D. Providing no context for the hands-on activities. 14. What is the primary objective of using rubrics in evaluating clinical skills? A. To limit grading subjectivity. B. To encourage students to grade themselves. C. To reduce instructor workload. D. To identify high achievers. 15. Which of the following best represents ethical communication in clinical instruction? A. Sharing learner evaluations with unauthorized staff. B. Providing feedback publicly to encourage accountability. C. Maintaining confidentiality while giving individual feedback. D. Using humor to critique performance. 16. How can a curriculum ensure alignment with adult learning principles? A. Prioritize rote memorization of procedures. B. Eliminate learner input from planning. C. Integrate real-world relevance and opportunities for self-reflection. D. Base content solely on instructor preference. 17. Which method best evaluates a student's critical thinking in a clinical scenario? A. Multiple-choice questions about definitions. B. Direct observation of decision-making in simulations. C. Attendance tracking. D. Skills checklist without context. 18. A mentor notices a mentee struggling with time management. What is the most supportive strategy? A. Advise them to figure it out. B. Reassign them to a different mentor. C. Collaboratively create a structured plan for improvement. D. Reduce their workload indefinitely. 19. In compliance training, which strategy promotes long-term behavioral change? A. Annual passive review of policy. B. Interactive workshops with scenario-based learning. C. Posting regulations on bulletin boards. D. Using fear-based messaging. 20. What is the key characteristic of andragogy as it relates to clinical education? A. Dependence on instructor-directed learning. B. Focus on child-based learning strategies. C. Emphasis on learners' experience and problem-centered approaches. D. Use of unstructured self-study materials. 21. What is the primary goal of formative evaluation during a clinical rotation? A. To identify licensure eligibility. B. To award academic credit. C. To provide feedback that supports skill development. D. To penalize performance deficits. 22. A clinical educator seeks to improve course alignment. What action should they take? A. Increase content volume. B. Remove performance evaluations. C. Align learning outcomes with instructional methods and assessments. D. Add more lectures unrelated to objectives. 23. Which technique best supports effective mentoring in a high-stakes clinical setting? A. Weekly email check-ins only. B. Strict observation without interaction. C. Shadowing followed by joint reflection and feedback. D. Assigning tasks without explanation. 24. What is the most appropriate method for assessing regulatory compliance in clinical practice? A. Instructor observation only. B. Review of randomly selected records. C. Structured compliance audits and feedback sessions. D. Peer surveys. 25. Which best demonstrates reflective practice in clinical instruction? A. Memorizing textbook guidelines. B. Completing tasks with no review. C. Journaling experiences to evaluate and improve practice. D. Repeating procedures without modification. 26. A curriculum designed for healthcare professionals should include which adult learning element? A. Mandatory weekly essays on theory. B. Isolation from practical experience. C. Integration of real-world case studies. D. Discouragement of group discussion. 27. In terms of evaluation, a summative assessment is best used to A. Track daily progress. B. Guide future instruction during a course. C. Provide a final judgment of competency. D. Offer mid-course feedback. 28. What is a key principle when mentoring across cultures? A. Imposing one's own beliefs. B. Avoiding cultural discussions. C. Demonstrating cultural humility and awareness. D. Encouraging conformity to dominant norms. 29. What type of communication fosters trust in clinical instruction? A. Vague and indirect messages. B. Inconsistent feedback. C. Honest, clear, and respectful dialogue. D. Frequent disciplinary language. 30. What is the benefit of using simulation in adult clinical learning? A. Eliminates need for clinical sites. B. Allows experiential learning in a controlled environment. C. Replaces the need for textbooks. D. Removes need for instructor input. 31. Which evaluation strategy offers the most objective measurement? A. Instructor's opinion. B. Peer popularity rating. C. Performance rubric with behavioral indicators. D. Informal reflection. 32. A clinical curriculum lacking outcome measures is likely to A. Facilitate innovation. B. Ensure consistency. C. Lack direction and accountability. D. Increase learner satisfaction. 33. In adult learning, why is self-assessment valuable? A. It shifts responsibility to instructors. B. It discourages feedback. C. It promotes personal responsibility and reflection. D. It is easier to grade. 34. What's the most effective response to a learner's clinical mistake? A. Immediate public correction. B. Ignoring the error. C. Using the mistake as a learning opportunity in private discussion. D. Disciplining without explanation. 35. What component is essential when mentoring novice instructors? A. Assigning them all lectures early. B. Monitoring without feedback. C. Providing modeling, observation, and ongoing support. D. Critiquing in front of students. 36. What instructional method most effectively supports adult learners with varying levels of clinical experience? A. Uniform lectures for all learners. B. One-size-fits-all assessments. C. Differentiated instruction with tiered case studies. D. Focus only on theoretical knowledge. 37. A primary benefit of co-teaching in clinical instruction is A. Reducing the number of evaluations. B. Allowing one instructor to dominate the session. C. Promoting shared expertise and modeling collaboration. D. Shortening instructional time. 38. Which of the following best fosters a growth mindset in adult learners? A. Ignoring mistakes. B. Praising only perfection. C. Encouraging persistence and framing challenges as opportunities. D. Discouraging risk-taking. 39. When designing curriculum for compliance training, the best approach includes A. Emphasis on punitive measures. B. Repetition of memorized policy language. C. Active learning strategies such as scenario-based modules. D. Avoidance of learner input. 40. Which behavior best supports effective mentoring relationships? A. Infrequent meetings. B. One-way communication. C. Mutual goal setting and active listening. D. Reliance on written feedback only. 41. What instructional strategy enhances learner engagement in clinical scenarios? A. Continuous passive lectures. B. Solo assignments without reflection. C. Interactive debriefs and role-playing. D. Heavy reliance on handouts. 42. In evaluating mentoring success, which measure is most meaningful? A. Number of meetings scheduled. B. Feedback from mentee on growth and support received. C. Mentor's resume length. D. Completion of paperwork. 43. Which communication strategy enhances team-based learning? A. Speaking over others to assert expertise. B. Withholding critical information. C. Practicing active listening and clarifying intent. D. Assigning roles without input. 44. An effective evaluation plan for clinical instruction should include A. Instructor intuition only. B. Multiple forms of assessment aligned to objectives. C. Observation by peers only. D. Open-ended feedback forms only. 45. A key principle of adult learning theory that supports clinical problem-solving is A. Deference to authority. B. Isolation from decision-making. C. Learning through real-life application. D. Memorization of long procedures. 46. Which approach best ensures regulatory compliance is embedded in clinical instruction? A. Posting rules in break rooms. B. Teaching rules once at orientation only. C. Integrating standards into simulations and practice assessments. D. Relying on learners to find regulations themselves. 47. The main purpose of peer mentoring in clinical training is to A. Reduce faculty workload. B. Encourage competition. C. Foster collaboration and knowledge sharing. D. Create rigid hierarchies. 48. When evaluating a clinical training program, which data provides the most insight? A. Number of handouts distributed. B. Student feedback and outcomes data. C. Instructor salary comparisons. D. Average attendance. 49. Which aspect of communication should be emphasized when delivering corrective feedback? A. Vagueness to soften the blow. B. Critique of personality traits. C. Focus on observable behavior and improvement. D. Sarcasm to lighten the mood. 50. In developing clinical curriculum, why is alignment with regulatory standards critical? A. To increase program length. B. To satisfy marketing requirements. C. To ensure accreditation and safe practice. D. To avoid having to write new material. 51. A best practice informative feedback is A. Offering praise without specifics. B. Providing immediate, specific guidance for improvement. C. Waiting until performance issues accumulate. D. Only using numerical scores. 52. What mentoring activity most promotes critical reflection in learners? A. Telling them what to do. B. Assigning repetitive tasks. C. Asking open-ended questions during debriefings. D. Ignoring their questions. 53. Which of the following best describes active learning in a clinical education context? A. Watching a video with no discussion. B. Listening to a lecture without taking notes. C. Engaging in simulations followed by discussion. D. Completing multiple choice quizzes only. 54. A strong mentoring relationship in clinical instruction is built on A. Competition and comparison. B. Hierarchical distance. C. Trust, respect, and shared accountability. D. Unilateral goal setting by the mentor. 55. What is the advantage of using standardized patients in clinical education? A. Reduces the need for supervision. B. Provides a consistent, controlled learning experience. C. Increases learner stress. D. Limits reflection. 56. When evaluating learner communication, what criterion is most important? A. Volume of speech. B. Technical jargon. C. Clarity, appropriateness, and empathy. D. Speed of delivery. 57. How can a mentor support long-term career development? A. Focus only on current clinical tasks. B. Discourage goal setting to reduce pressure. C. Provide opportunities for growth, reflection, and networking. D. Withhold constructive criticism. 58. What method best ensures that clinical instruction aligns with adult learners' motivations? A. Assigning material without context. B. Using top-down approaches. C. Involving learners in setting personal learning goals. D. Ignoring learner feedback. 59. In regulatory compliance instruction, how should performance be measured? A. Self-reports only. B. Open book written tests. C. Performance-based checklists aligned with standards. D. Peer impressions. 60. What teaching approach fosters autonomy in adult clinical learners? A. Micromanagement. B. Passive instruction. C. Guided inquiry and independent decision-making. D. Group memorization drills. 61. Which of the following strategies best addresses the needs of learners with different cultural backgrounds? A. Standardized lessons without modification. B. Cultural assimilation programs. C. Inclusion of culturally responsive examples and case studies. D. Avoiding cultural discussions. 62. What type of curriculum evaluation focuses on learner outcomes at the end of instruction? A. Process evaluation. B. Diagnostic assessment. C. Summative evaluation. D. Formative feedback. 63. Which component is essential for ensuring feedback is accepted by adult learners? A. Delivered without context. B. Centered on instructor preferences. C. Based on clear, observable behavior. D. Generalized and vague. 64. In mentoring, a key skill that improves mentee outcomes is A. Constant surveillance. B. Inflexibility. C. Empathy and collaborative problem solving. D. Avoidance of constructive feedback. 65. When developing a clinical assessment tool, what ensures reliability? A. Using informal language. B. Clear scoring criteria and repeatable administration. C. Handwritten instructor notes. D. Changing content frequently. 66. A well-designed learning objective should be A. Vague and inspirational. B. Focused on instructor needs. C. Measurable, observable, and learner-centered. D. Only cognitive in focus. 67. What element of adult learning theory is addressed through real-world application? A. Rote memorization. B. Passive lecture absorption. C. Relevance to learners' life and goals. D. Graded discussions only. 68. In clinical education, how does interprofessional instruction benefit learners? A. Creates confusion among roles. B. Delays specialization. C. Enhances collaboration and understanding of team roles. D. Limits personal achievement. 69. The most effective use of reflective journals in clinical learning is A. Grading them solely on length. B. Requiring detailed summaries of readings. C. Encouraging self-assessment and growth. D. Using them for attendance checks. 70. To ensure fairness in performance assessment, instructors should A. Compare students to each other. B. Use subjective opinion. C. Rely on standardized rubrics and clear expectations. D. Grade based on personal preference. TSI Writing Skills Test. The TSI Writing Skills Test is part of the Texas Success Initiative assessment, designed to evaluate a student's readiness for college-level coursework in writing. It measures essential skills in grammar, sentence structure, punctuation, organization, and the ability to revise and edit written passages. The test presents multiple-choice questions based on short reading selections, requiring test takers to identify and correct errors, improve sentence clarity, and strengthen logical flow. The goal is to assess a student's ability to construct clear, coherent, and grammatically correct writing. Performance on the test helps determine whether a student requires developmental instruction before enrolling in college composition courses. Here are the top 5 beneficial uses of the sample exam. 1. College placement. The TSI Writing Skills Test determines whether a student is prepared for college-level English courses or needs developmental education, helping institutions place students appropriately. 2. Academic preparedness assessment. It provides a clear measure of a student's strengths and weaknesses in grammar, organization, and sentence structure, guiding improvement efforts. 3. Customized learning plans. Based on test results, colleges can tailor coursework to address specific skill gaps, ensuring efficient and targeted instruction for student success. 4. Supports advising and counseling. Advisors use scores to help students make informed decisions about course selection, reducing the risk of failure and dropouts. 5. Boosts college readiness initiatives. The test helps high schools and colleges collaborate on early intervention strategies, preparing students more effectively for post-secondary education.